one of the few Labour politicians with a farming background, so it was always a safe bet he would become Minister of Agriculture. He is a former West Coast Young Farmer of the Year, and you look at his business interests and his sporting pursuits, he is a man who is comfortable in the outdoors. He is the Minister of a number of other portfolios, all of which are relevant here as we discuss New Zealand's ability to sustainably produce high-quality food. Ladies and gentlemen, with his vision for the future and still without a tie, ladies and gentlemen, Damien O'Connor.
Kia ora. Look, thank you, Jeff. And I was in a bit of a rush, but I thought, look, coming into this building, surely I don't have to wear a tie. Could I just apologise? I have been a little late. I met this morning with the Victorian Agricultural Minister, Jacqueline Symes, and she's over here for a few days in New Zealand trying to learn about what we're doing in a whole lot of areas. So it was a pleasure to catch up with her. It has caught me, made me a little late. Can I acknowledge Barry O'Neill, the President, Julian Raine, past President. He comes from a good part of the area, a good part of the country, and he has a wonderful, no, actually doesn't, he's just outside my boundary, so he doesn't have a good representative. But anyway, nice to see you here. Professor David Hughes, and unfortunately I won't be able to stay to hear you, but it was great to have my mate. I'm always polite to Grant. He's got the money. I need it occasionally. We need it. It was nice for him to acknowledge the wellbeing budget, and I guess you can claim some credit for that. What else is 5+ a day? It's about well-being. And I guess this industry has acknowledged that for a long time, and we've just taken that through into politics and into good policy, we hope. Look, thanks for inviting me to be here. I said last night, this is an ambitious industry. Who else would have a conference in this massive, massive building here? Obviously, you plan to fill this up over the next decade or so. It's a great asset to New Zealand agriculture, and I just acknowledge, I guess, the increasing level of participation at National Field Days by the horticultural sector, and so you should be too. We have a lot going on in government. We hope in partnership with you. We've got issues around water. We've got a zero carbon bill that is currently out now for consultation, and I hope that you have been attending, if possible, some of those meetings that James Shaw and officials have been running around the place. We've launched a new food safety tools, some templates for industry, and the innovative people who take your products and turn them into high value, often consumer products. Then we've been working more recently with New Zealand Food Safety to help them make progress there. We're launching, of course, and have been working on organic standards for export, one standard for New Zealand and then one for domestic production. Really important. We've been able to do organic production and export, but it's been a bit ad hoc, and we believe that will give more confidence to the industry if we can get that one sorted out. We've got remote verification for some of those food producers. Lots going on in partnership with the food sector. Can I just say congratulations to horticulture. You are the fastest growing sector in primary industries. You are contributing more and more to our export, and thank you for that. $45 billion to the last 2 years, ongoing and strong growth in total exports from this country, and the horticultural sector showing the biggest lift in that growth. Have to say, kiwi fruit, after PSA, when we all thought that perhaps we'd be going out the back door, has now come back to a position where a 25% lift in value from that sector alone is a huge achievement. And it's a tribute to cooperation, collaboration, industry unity, and I hope we all learn from the lessons of that. I guess one of the other star, outcomes from the horticultural sector is the diversification, the fact that we haven't just stuck to the traditional apples, pears and kiwi fruit, that we're now starting to see massive growth across things like avocados. Of course, wine's been steady growth. We keep drinking and doing our bit and producing fine quality wines. That's been spectacular. Cherries and many, many other things. I have to say it was a pleasure to go down and be part of the opening of 2 pack houses, Vandervoorts, down in central Otago, and Golden Bay Fruit in my own area of Motueka. Both high technology pack houses leading the way in technology, enabling us to better process our fine quality fruit and give assurance and backup to those who want to buy it. One of the challenges that we have, of course, is where we should be growing our fine produce. And the issues around Pukekohe and other cities where urban growth is encroaching upon Class 1 and high quality elite soils is something that we have not been prepared to sit back and just ignore. We have and we will be launching, we've been developing and will launch a discussion document on elite soils and highly productive land, we're calling it. A national policy statement is needed to give clearer guidelines to regional councils around the country. In reading through those papers, I was alarmed to see that we have 10,500 hectares already designated under council plans that can be converted from high productivity into low productivity, which is effectively houses. And while we do need more houses in this country, places like Auckland should grow up, not grow out, and I feel very strongly about that. Continued urban sprawl not only encroaches upon our highly productive land, but it also adds to the complexities around inefficient infrastructure. And so we will be releasing that. That's David Parker and myself, the Minister for the Environment. We'll be releasing that discussion document soon. Biosecurity. Clearly and consistently identified as the #1 priority across the agribusiness sector. And the KPMG reports, I think for 7 years, have said that biosecurity is our biggest concern. We've taken that on board, and we have in both of our budgets increased funding for biosecurity. There are always issues. We came into government with the challenge of Mycoplasma bovis, and some of you will be connected to the livestock industry. And we have to acknowledge the pain and the anguish for those people who are caught up in that. It is a difficult situation when you're faced with having to slaughter or cull your whole herd, people who have worked with a passion to develop their own livestock and have to see them be sent down the road. That's the cold, hard reality of biosecurity incursions. And just as people in kiwi fruit, of course, face those harsh realities with PSA, we have to assist them in every way we can. People judge the biosecurity system in a number of ways. Discussion last night, nice to see a dog in the green lane at Auckland Airport. It's not a good measure of how effective our biosecurity system is. I have to say, well, I'll meet the dog handlers later today, and they play a crucial role, a vital role. It's a multi-layered system that must be improved at every level. The import health standards, over 1,200 of them, that have sat around and not been reviewed for quite some time, need an upgrade. And we've started to systematically work through those. Absolutely essential that we get it right. But the world, not only just through climate change, but the world of changing trade and people movements is changing quite rapidly. That's why we have set up an intelligence unit that will build a network across the globe of the most up-to-date information and trends on biosecurity threats. It's no longer good enough just to establish an import health standard and then think things are okay. We've got to have active management in all of those areas, and we have set up that unit, and while it has taken about 18 months to establish, we are not prepared to have anything other than the best people and the best connections internationally, and to gather the best possible intelligence on that. We have been trying to catch up, and I'll say it bluntly, after 9 years, we'd say, of relative neglect, we've had a rapid increase in the trade and people movements in and out of this country. And when I asked for a review of the pathways to possible incursions, the report came back and said, generally the system works okay, but in 2 crucial areas you need to ramp up your efforts. One was the postal pathway through the one facility we have at Auckland International Airport, and the other was at the airport itself. The same footprint there for biosecurity control as was from about 2005. And the number of people has increased significantly. We now have one X-ray machine there, and we want to put another one in. But Auckland Airport, in all its development, has ignored the base requirement of biosecurity. And so our staff are working in cramped conditions, trying to do a better job with more people, and it is a challenge. So we've been working actively. I'll be meeting, I've had a number of discussions, and I'll meet with Auckland International Airport Chief Executive today again to say that, you know, unless you put investment in the right area, then we're going to have to slow down the passage of people through your airport, because we will not accept compromised biosecurity standards because your facilities are inadequate. And so for those of you who are taking your annual holidays, if it takes a little longer to come through Auckland Airport because they haven't invested, then I make no apologies. We have to do that. I've said a couple of times, those of you importing your exotic cars from Italy, if they come with brown marmorated stink bugs in the ships, you'll have to wait for them too. We will not accept boats that are infested with brown marmorated stink bug, and we will be constantly upgrading the protocols around exports and imports from those countries into New Zealand to keep that unwanted pest out. We have set up, of course, Biosecurity New Zealand as a separate agency within the Ministry for Primary Industries, along with New Zealand Food Safety. Those two areas are so crucial that in coming into government, we believe that they need a single focus, and indeed we're doing that. The Biosecurity Act has been around for about 25 years, and it needs an overhaul, and we've committed to do that. Last week I announced some terms of reference. It will be done in 2 stages. Some of these issues need to be resolved quite quickly. Others are more principled, are longer term issues dealing with iwi, the interrelationship with them, native flora and fauna, how we manage things like kauri dieback, and then the objectives around things like bovine tuberculosis. So the 2 tranches will take some time to work through, but we must update an act that has been around for too long. I can say that we're very mindful of what sometimes people see as a contradictory objective. One is to lift the value of everything we produce and export, and the other is to ensure that New Zealanders can afford to buy food. The KPMG report this year said that we must firstly focus on feeding New Zealanders and then looking to help feed the world. And it's been a shift, maybe a subtle one, but it's an important one that primary producers should take on board. The social license to operate is very, very important. We live in a country where the vast majority of people live in urban areas, yet we still have a huge dependence and a high dependence on our primary production. The level of understanding between urban and rural is not as good as it was or as good as it should be. It's not their fault, it's not our fault, it's simply been the way that this country has developed. We need to maintain the social license, whether it's dairy farming or growing vegetables in Horticulture. So we are facing some challenges, and that's why we make no apology for focusing on things like water quality and trying to reassure people that while we may have made mistakes in the past because we didn't know, we are focused on developing a better and more sustainable future around water quality, around sediment loss, and in livestock, around issues like animal welfare. We need to maintain the confidence of the people out there in wider New Zealand that what we do is sustainable, is of highest standards in the world, and that they should support us in every way. And so the prices that they pay at the supermarkets for their food, they think reflects the prosperity of the growers. We know that's not true, and there are a number of layers between what they pay and what you receive. I share the views of my coalition colleague, Shane Jones. We do need to have a careful look at how the supermarkets behave, but there's good behaviour and not so good behaviour with them. And it's not a simple matter of just leaping in there taking GST off, which was one idea, or bringing in the Commerce Commission, which is another idea. It's just building, I guess, a fair partnership between what you do and what they sell and the cost of that. So I commit, along with Shane Jones, to keep an eye on that. One of the ways that we can ensure affordability of food, of course, is lifting the incomes of New Zealanders. And that is the objective of this government. We make no apologies about that. And, excuse me, you may think that that's going to have a huge impact on your business. And yes, in the short term it might. But you know how difficult running your business is if you can't get people. And the issue of labour and skills is one that was a topic of conversation yesterday. I pulled together a primary sector skills leadership group, and they have been working ahead of the curve in the issue of vocational training. They have been looking at our sectors and saying, what do we need? What kind of training is required? Excuse me. And how are we going to sustain the level of labour and the skills to have a better future across all the primary sectors, from forestry through to dairy farming, horticulture, viticulture. We need to pay people more. We need to get more for what you do, not just ask you to do more. And if there's a difference between the last government and this government, it's we don't want you to double exports, we want you to get more value for everything that you do now and share that value. There was an article last week, and I was offshore and I picked up on it. It was one around the kiwi fruit industry, made by an objective observer, saying that record returns for kiwi fruit, just as big a problem as ever, trying to attract staff to pick the kiwi fruit and to manage the whole process. Not terribly logical in a strict market environment. And while we, as a government, introduced RSE because of the need for it, and have continued to support RSE and understand the reliance on migrant labour, we do have to look to a more secure future when it comes to each and every one of our businesses. Because it might be a pandemic, it might be some issue that connects to international movement of people around tourism or whatever, but we must be more secure in every part of our business, not just a bank and giving us a bit of working capital, not just having access to the right machinery and technology, but actually having the right people with the right skills. We've acknowledged this as a primary sector, and we're working on it to the point where we will be the first cab off the rank when it comes to the review of vocational education and the review of polytechs, ITOs, so that we will hopefully get the courses and the people and the funding required to give us the skills that we need. If I can just go back to the one of attracting people and holding people in our industry, Kiwis and the new generation, millennials, have access to all the information they ever want. They're making choices based on values and based on their perceived future. It may not be what they hope it is, but they have aspirations to have a better world, to have a better life, and some of that comes down to the returns they get for their efforts. They are smart, they have lots of options. If we're to attract and retain them in horticulture and the primary sectors, we're going to have to pay them well, we're going to have to provide them with pathways to a sound career, and we're going to have to give them a reason to do what they want to do. The Primary Sector Council that I appointed, and there are a couple of people here on it, was given a task of trying to set a vision for our primary sectors. What do we want to do? Where do we want to be in 20 or 30 years' time? And some of you may say, well, the market changes every week. We're full of disruption coming at us from every angle. How can we plan for a future? Well, you can ask iwi why they plan for a better future. You can go to China and ask why that country plans for a better future. And I'd suggest that long-term vision and planning will deliver them a better outcome in the long term. And if we continue to be battered around from quarter to quarter financial reports, or year-to-year profits without a vision and a sense of direction, then we'll end up wasting capital and we'll end up wasting people. And we can't afford to do that. So the vision that will be launched by Lane Jager and the other members of the Primary Sector Council, in collaboration with other sector leaders, I hope will give us a new sense of direction, a belief in ourselves that what we do here in New Zealand is pretty much at the best levels and standards in the world, pretty much. But where we have some issues around water quality, around labour standards occasionally, around animal welfare, if we can lift those to be world leading, then we truly will be able to say that we produce the finest products for the world's most discerning customers, and we deserve to get the highest premiums and returns for that. Then there'll be the money to share through this economy and have well-being for each and every New Zealander. That is our government's goal, and that should be this sector's. We have some assistance for your sector and others through the Sustainable Food and Fibre Futures Fund, $40 million. And I put it out there to those of you who have good ideas around better pest management, integrated pest management, new technology for packaging or whatever. Please bring your ideas to us so that we can help you progress those. I think we have an incredible future. We've just launched an agri-tech strategy. We believe that drawing on the best of information and knowledge from around the world, we can bring it and apply it here in New Zealand in ways that will allow us to continue to lead the way. If not in technology, at least in its application. So that money and a better aligned research and science strategy, which we will have, I believe will take us into the new world. Whether it be robotics, whether it be real-time sensoring of each and everything we do, whether it's to assist us with precision application of nitrates. All of these things are necessary and will help us get more returns. Can I say that one of the things, and a few people from here were over in Tohono last week, over in Stanford University, where again, the Primary Sector Council and industry leaders were coming together. We had a 3-hour session on storytelling. And you may think, well, that's the kind of crazy stuff they learn over there. But it was amazing. And our ability to connect with our customers is so important. And telling stories about who we are and what we do is an incredible opportunity. And some of us do that well, and most of us don't. And there are techniques that we should learn to ensure that if you're producing a product and you want to sell it direct to consumer, which many of you do, then there should be a way of telling the story of the way that it is produced and the passion behind it and the reasons that you produce it that gives you a point of difference and advantage in the market. And so this is the new world we're moving into, where blockchain, where values of our consumers are shifting, that we have to be up to date to ensure that we can survive. We're never going to compete on the economies of scale because we're a relatively small country, but we can in all these other areas of ethical production, high standards of food safety, and then telling the story that means that people want to buy a product from our country because they want to be associated with a country that is the best country for the world. And that's why we're moving on climate change issues. That's why we're moving on water quality, as I said before. If we can show the rest of the world how to produce food in a sustainable manner, then we really will be held up as a country worth connecting to and buying from. And I'm really cautious, but I draw on the values of Māori, kaitiakitanga and manakitanga, underpinning the things that we do, sharing who we are through the produce that we grow, and then caring for the environment and the world in the way that we do that. And if we can better understand and respect those values and incorporate those into our stories, then I think the world is our oyster. We can feed 40, if you make a real effort, maybe 50, 60 million people, a couple of big cities around the world. So there's plenty of markets for what we produce, but choosing where, firstly why, and then where and what we produce are the questions that we and you have to grapple with as we go forward. So if we can, as I say, work with and build on the amazing story of our country, the bicultural country that we have, if we can build on that, then again, it's something that people want to connect to. And in that way, just in this way, I'd like to announce that Te Puna Kokiri and MPI will be platinum sponsors of the Excellence in Māori Horticulture Award, Te Awhenua Awards, for 2020, next year. The Awhenua Awards, as some of you may know, are incredible events, probably one of the biggest primary industry events in the country, actually. Wonderful celebration of Māori in agriculture. Beef and lamb, dry stock, and then dairy have been the two. And horticulture is now part of that wonderful celebration. And so it's great to be announcing that we will be platinum sponsors, government supporting that, supporting Māori farming, but supporting horticulture. And I know the partnerships that many of you have built up with Māori across New Zealand are very strong and productive and profitable. And may they continue. Whether it be Wakatu down on my patch or other of the many successful incorporations in the North Island, Māori are showing us the way forward in many ways. And their efforts to incorporate their values into their produce offshore with a marketing strategy is something that we should connect to, and if they allow us, share right back into the core part of horticulture, viticulture, agriculture, and everything we do. So look, thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words. Probably spoken for too long, but they always give me these too many notes. Look, it's an honour, but it's a huge responsibility to be Minister for Agriculture and representing you. This afternoon I go to China. RCEP is it's a trade negotiation with half the world's population. And while this won't double the amount of money you might get for your exports, if we can bring rules of trade to half the world's population and get the countries to stick to those rules, we will be more secure in everything we do. At the moment, and I was in Washington last week, speaking to people in Washington on the East Coast and in Stanford on the West Coast, almost two different countries. The ones on the East Coast are very focused on the battle with China, the trade battle with China, the renegotiation of NAFTA. They still have yet to reach any agreement with Mexico and Canada, and then the EU as well. We, of course, would like a free trade agreement with the US. But I'd suggest that regardless of the enthusiasm of individuals, and I think we have a lot of supportive people who want to progress this, the chances of that happening in the near future are slim. We hope that they can sort out their issues with China. In the meantime, we've got to push ahead with trade agreements in the EU and the UK, but the RCEP one that I go to tomorrow, or go to this afternoon, really important. The rules of trade are the things that protect us. And we do not want ad hoc, non-tariff barriers and interventions that prevent your quality products from getting into the market. And so we'll continue to battle on your behalf in government. I know David Parker and myself will do our best. It's a bit of travel, but it's nice to see in market and meet in market some of your representatives who are passionate about portraying and advocating and selling our country. So thank you for what you do at this end. I'd like to acknowledge, I think Lawrence Hill's there. I don't know whether I have any other parliamentary colleagues, Lawrence, but thank you for the invitation to say a few words to you. I wish you all the very best. I love your ambition. as a sector. Your growth has been spectacular. Long may it continue, but let's be realistic about the challenges, address them and move on, and we are committed to work with you on those. Kia ora.